Hi, everybody, and welcome to Vital Living Forum. There are more than 2.7 million older adults in the U.S. who identify as lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgender. And many of these individuals grew up during a time when the LGBT community was nearly absent in public discourse. And as a result, an older generation of LGBT adults face challenges that their younger counterparts or straight seniors do not. This Vital Living Forum will explore these challenges and look at innovative programs here in Central Florida that support the LGBT elder community. I'm Clarence Reynolds, and joining me are Therese Murphy with the Center, Ken Terrell with the Oak, and Jennifer Foster with the One Orlando Alliance. Welcome.
Thank you.
I want to start out by talking about a time when people were not so supportive of the gay community and what kind of impact that had on that community.
Well, I think it's really important to note that this particular generation of LGBT seniors is facing challenges that we don't expect future generations. This group was born in places and times where they could have been jailed for loving who they loved. And they ended up their lives in a country that approved same-sex marriage. So they've been through a lot, and a lot of them have led closeted lives. A lot of them have been more isolated than even other seniors because of being LGBT.
And the lack of family support has also been really impactful to a lot of older LGBT seniors. So how is that really carried on into their older years?
I'll take it. I was like, well, yeah, I agree with that. With the population of the LGBT community, we're most likely to not have kids. The disproportionate part of our family disowning us because we're coming out of the closet, as they should say. But I think that we can resolve that issue if there was more sensitivity training involved within families, providers, and as a whole in general.
And one of the really important things these days is workplace discrimination, because it's sort of a double-edged sword. You're a senior in the workplace and you're also an LGBT senior in the workplace. How does that affect a senior who is still of working age and great health, wants to get out there and needs to make money?
Yeah. I mean, discrimination in the workplace is a big issue for all LGBTQ individuals. In 30 states, you can legally be fired, you can be discriminated against based on your sexual orientation or gender identity, including the state of Florida. So it definitely is a big concern for all of our community members, and our elders have lived with that their entire lives, right? So they've gone through this era where perhaps they've been closeted, perhaps they've been denied promotions or being elevated in positions in the workplace. In many cases don't have the same health care coverage for their partners or their family members. So there's a lot of impact on workplace equality and a lot of work to be done there, especially when it comes to those that are aging in the workforce.
And one of the impacts of that workplace inequality is an impact on finances, as you talked about, not being able to get benefits for a partner and having to take over that burden. How do the finances of LGBT seniors get impacted by discrimination?
Well, because this generation was more likely to be fired, less likely to be hired, more likely to be turned down for a promotion because of being LGBT. They didn't earn as much, so that impacts what available income they have as seniors. In addition, they don't have spousal benefits, and a lot of them are single, and if you've been paying the mortgage and the electric bill alone your whole life, you're gonna, again, have less disposable income.
I feel that, well, individuals such as when they retire, their income level does change. Without having a spouse or losing a spouse and not being able to have survival benefits is a difficult thing. We all live here in the state of Florida, which is a retirement state. And most older people that are seniors, they are still working because you cannot afford to live in the state without working.
And to tag on to workplace equality, housing discrimination is real also, and that exists in our community. Some of our elders are openly discriminated against because they are LGBT in terms of the housing situations that they choose to live, and so that's a big issue that impacts people financially as well.
I want to go back to the whole concept of having a more supportive, open environment that we have now, just in general with LGBT individuals. But for older individuals, the psychology of coming to terms with how open people are in this environment, and whether a lot of seniors are still a little hesitant to jump into the pool, so to speak, because of their past and what that impact has on a lot of people and their relationships.
Well, sure, if you face discrimination or bullying or even physical assaults, you're going to have some trauma associated with that, and you're going to be less likely to get close to people. Some of this generation doesn't have long-term close relationships with neighbors or with coworkers. And then of course we add to that people moving to Central Florida for a warmer, cheaper retirement don't have established, groups of people that support them either.
We also have people moving to Central Florida because they see our community, especially Orange County, as a very affirming, open, inclusive community. So we have people young and in their senior years who are moving here because they want to be their authentic selves. They want to live their life openly and proudly in a place where they can feel safe and included. And some of the best examples of that are people from our transgender community and our gender nonconforming community who are choosing to move here from other parts of the state because they believe that they'll be able to authentically be who they are. And we have people that are in their 70s that are transitioning now, actively going through the transition process to finally be who they are because they feel safe here in Orange County. So, as much as there are challenges, there are also some really beautiful opportunities that are here for our seniors and our aging population.
And I want to talk a little bit about the transgender community and how they are able to find support in this environment where it may be a new city. They're moving from some other place and trying to come to terms with who they authentically are. Are there resources? Are there groups? Are there places where the transgender community can really feel at home here in Central Florida?
Well, I work at the LGBT plus center. Most people know it as the center. And we have a number of groups. We have groups for transgender women, transgender men, and we have groups for caretakers of transgender youth. So that's a great place to start if people are looking for support.
And so I represent One Orlando Alliance, which is a coalition of 40 member organizations, nonprofits that serve the LGBTQ community. And many of our member organizations specifically provide services to the transgender, gender nonconforming, and non-binary community. And so we would encourage someone, if they need assistance, to reach out, and we can help them navigate to the services that they're looking for.
Well, we are going to continue this conversation about some of the challenges that are facing LGBT seniors. We'll be right back. Welcome back to this Vital Living Forum on LGBT elders. I'm Clarence Reynolds, and joining me are Therese Murphy with the Center, Ken Terrell with the Oak, and Jennifer Foster with the One Orlando Alliance. Welcome back, everybody. Two of the most important things that are affecting LGBT seniors are loneliness and isolation. How is that an issue that an LGBT senior can find some sort of resources in the community?
Well, the center is a good place to start. First of all, I think most people understand now that social support is one of the biggest indicators, not only of emotional and mental good health, but of physical good health as well. And so it's really important, especially in our senior years, that we gather as much love and support in our lives as we can. The center is a great place to start. I run a program called the Older, Wiser Learning Program. We have a lunch every Thursday. People come, they hang out, they play games for a few hours, make friends. I'm sure there have been a few romances started over the years in the Owls. The center is a great place to start.
And you mentioned that having a social support network is important to physical and mental well-being. How does that play out for an older adult who just may be more comfortable by themselves?
Well, I mean, I think it's the same with all humans, right? I mean, isolation is not a healthy thing for individuals. And so as people age, it's really important that they stay engaged mentally, physically, and emotionally with people that are like-minded, people that are of diverse thought and diverse experiences, and really just be able to kind of thrive in life. I mean, I think part of the goal of of aging is to enjoy that with other people and to share your experiences. We have several organizations in our community that have volunteer opportunities. That's a great way for seniors to get involved. There's a lot of great opportunities for people to get engaged, and there's some social clubs that are around in town also where people can engage. So it just takes a little looking in some cases and finding the right fit, but it's really important that people don't isolate and stay to themselves, constantly.
We do understand that this generation has sometimes had bad experiences in places like faith communities or places where people volunteer, like civic organizations. But there are opportunities in the area if they can reach out and come in. Everybody needs companionship, love, and connection, and that's especially important in the senior years. And it actually does have a negative impact on physical health. Also, we find seniors are much more likely to be depressed and anxious, not just LGBT seniors, but most seniors.
Talking about physical health, how does an LGBT senior navigate the aging process, getting older, physically having medical issues, and starting to realize that they're getting older in this really youth-oriented society that we have, particularly here in Orlando, where there is a vibrant young population, which is good, but just sort of juxtaposed with getting older and coming to terms with who you are in this environment. How do they navigate that?
Well, with that step, most of the time with older people, the first step with medical providers is that disclosing yourselves. And if they're not comfortable of disclosing themselves, you're not going to get the true authenticity of that individual, of what's really going on with their situation. So recommendations that have been done, like Crew Health Services, they have a safe zone, and there's signals or messages and verbiage that identifies that, hey, we understand. So usually people look for rainbows, trans flags, equality symbols, messages in the office to let you know that this is a welcoming environment for an individual.
Yeah, that's important. The relationship between a patient and a provider is very important in terms of the LGBTQ plus community. And so there's a lot of work being done to ensure that our healthcare practitioners in the region are LGBTQ culturally competent, and that they are providing affirming spaces, they are providing inclusive spaces, they know the right questions to ask to get the right information from their patients. Because if you're not treating someone holistically based on their whole life experience, you're really missing a lot of pieces. And historically, the elder population has maybe not felt comfortable being out to their healthcare providers. But as they age, it's even more important that they truly disclose all of who they are to their physicians. And so that's a two-way street, right? We need our elderly population to be able to feel safe enough to do that, and we need our providers to have the competence to be able to ask the right questions and to be affirming when people do share their experiences with them.
I always encourage medical personnel to not make assumptions. Don't assume because someone is past a certain age, they have children and grandchildren, or they're married. Don't assume that someone who is past a certain age is not sexually active. Ask the questions you would ask of anybody of seniors.
And Therese, you mentioned something that was really interesting about having gone through discrimination in a religious environment or maybe in a medical environment. And this is Florida. Which has many faces, and is there some validity to the hesitation that an LGBT senior would have going into these places of worship or to see a doctor or any other environment, workplace? Is there some validity to that?
Oh, absolutely. It's not just perception, it's lived experience. I mentioned that I have a group of about 35 that come for lunch every Thursday. And a very large number of them have told me they were brought to psychiatrists when they were young. They had terrible experiences at churches. Some of them went through conversion therapy. And some of them just had medical personnel that they couldn't connect with, that didn't ask them the right questions. And so they put off going to a doctor occasionally. And that's not good either. We need to feel comfortable with our providers, and we need to get the information to them. As Jennifer said, it's a two-way street, but we do need them to have the right information to know how to treat us. But it's not just perception. A lot of the hesitance in certain kind of institutions is lived experience.
Our community has faced layer upon layer upon layer of trauma, and that doesn't just get reversed because you meet an affirming physician or you meet an affirming provider. And so getting people to fully open up takes a community really putting a lot of emphasis on making sure that we're creating inclusive spaces. I think we're so grateful to live in Orange County where we have this aspiration to do that. There's still some work to do along those lines, and there are a lot of great community providers that are doing that work, but the intention is there. But when you look at our elder population and you think about the childhood that they grew up with and the battles that they faced their entire life to just make it to their elder golden years, they should be able to be experiencing all the bliss that any individual does, but they have just passed insurmountable trauma to get to that place.
Many of the gay, bisexual, and transgender men who lived through the 80s and 90s are dealing with the emotional and mental PTSD of HIV and AIDS, and having dealt with that, does that complicate things? Having HIV be something that they have to complicate on top of all of their other concerns?
It actually does, because a person that's of age, as senior-wise, with complications of HIV, there are similar complications without seeing providers, such as cardiovascular situations, diabetes 2, these factors that if you're not going to be in care, these things could be prevented, or it can be watched and seen, and if you're not seeing that provider or going in to take care of yourself, it's pointless for you to just be here, to take care of what you're doing.
And we do find discrimination still exists in the medical community. I know someone in Orange County who is very successful, an outgoing man. He's in his 40s. He went to a doctor last year who said he wanted him to take what the doctor called an AIDS test. We call it an HIV test. And this man has been monogamous for 15 years and he didn't want to take it, and he said that, and later on he got a call that it would be okay with the doctor if he found a different doctor. So that kind of discrimination and those misunderstandings are still out there. And a pretty large percentage of LGBT senior men are living with HIV.
Mm-hmm. And there's a huge disparity between the stigma between what the younger generation thinks, how the younger generation thinks about HIV and the elder population, right? Because of their lived experience and because of what they went through and all the friends that they lost or the challenges that they face personally. So our younger population is really changing the face of how we view HIV, and it's not stigmatized as an LGBTQ disease anymore, right? But our older population still is facing some of that lingering stigma.
Well, we'll be right back, but we're going to continue this conversation about some of the organizations and the work that they're doing to help the LGBT community and its elders. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody. You're watching the Vital Living Forum. I'm Clarence Reynolds, and we are talking about LGBT elders. And to this segment, we want to talk about some of the programs that exist to support the LGBT community as well as the elders in that community. And joining me are Therese Murphy with the Center, Ken Terrell with the Oak, and we also have Jennifer Foster with the One Orlando Alliance. Therese, you mentioned that the Center, which is really sort of all-encompassing in some ways, is one of the places where people can go at different stages of their life to deal with all kinds of issues that they might have as far as being an LGBT individual. What are some of the other agencies that are out there, and what are they doing to help the community?
Well, as you said, the Center is a good place. We have two groups that meet there that are specifically seniors. One is men, seniors, and a number of things. And I do want people to know there are groups for transgender people. There is a group called Gender Queer, which is for non-binary and gender fluid people. We have different groups for caretakers of transgender teens. We have Rainbow AA and NA and Rainbow Democrats. So the Center is a great place to start. Actually, Ken just told me about a group that I'd never heard of that was senior women, senior lesbian women.
The OWL. It's another OWL, Older Wiser Lesbians.
Another OWL group.
And then there's a social group called the Primetimers,
yes,
which is for gay men.
Mm-hmm.
So there are,
and their admirers.
And their admirers, yes, yes. But I think in terms of other organizations, the center really has the groups that meet, that support the elder population. Many of our organizations serve our elder population. So, our healthcare services organizations, the Orlando Gay Chorus is a great place for our elder community if they're looking for a way just to engage socially and if they have some interest in music. Central Florida Sounds of Freedom Marching Band has some elder members. So there's lots of different organizations in our community that welcome the elder community as part of the larger collective.
And Jennifer, how about One Orlando Alliance? And so what does it do? I know the origins of it have put Orlando on the map in some ways, but in not so good ways. But tell us about what some of the things that are happening there.
Sure, it's a coalition of member organizations. So it's currently 41 nonprofit organizations that serve the LGBTQ plus community. And those organizations work in all kinds of different sectors within our community. Some are healthcare, some are social, some are, it's just the organizations that support the community. What we've done is come together to look at community-centric issues. So what's traditionally happened in our community and happens all across the country is that these really great nonprofit organizations are working on issues, but they're just kind of chipping away at them, right? Or they're putting Band-Aids on symptoms as opposed to really looking at the root cause of the issues. So with the Alliance, we bring all of the organizations together. We really focus on the community-centric issues. What are the root causes of those and how can we solve those? So we're looking at things like homelessness. We're looking at our vulnerable populations like our communities with disabilities and our elderly community, our transgender, gender nonconforming communities. We're looking at things like racial inequity, immigration. People that are the most vulnerable in our communities that perhaps haven't had a seat at the table in the past are now having voices through the Alliance so that we can look at our community more holistically and make sure that nobody's left behind.
And one of the interesting things is that we have the services, we have the community for an LGBT senior to get involved with, but still we hear the stories of people who are afraid to get involved. How can they sort of break through that barrier of wanting to get out there and get involved with a group and go to the center and find out what's available? How do they break through that barrier of fear?
Well, I run the program, so of course I would suggest they come for lunch on Thursday. It's at noon, it's free. There's a warm, welcoming group of people that loves to meet new people. So that's a great place to start. I think that some of the onus also has to be put on people who work with seniors and people who own home health companies or people who have medical practices need to really look into having somebody come and do sensitivity training and teach them what is going on with this generation so they don't make assumptions, so they don't leave out important information, so that their staff is able to work with these seniors as well as any other group of people.
And that's something through One Orlando Alliance we can provide navigation to. So we can provide experts who will come out and do trainings and healthcare specific trainings for LGBTQ cultural competency, employment trainings. We have a program called the Inclusion Learning Journey, which does just that. It pulls together experts who can train our employers and our service organizations on how to make sure that they're really affirming of our LGBTQ community members. Mm-hmm.
And what still needs to be done to address the needs of the growing LGBT population, of elder population here in Central Florida? Where are there gaps that really need to be filled in?
Yeah, we need to look at housing. Housing is an issue in Central Florida in general, right? And so housing, especially for the LGBTQ community, is an issue. When it comes to our elders, there's a real severe lack of competent housing and affordable housing for our seniors. So that's an area. I think also social groups and support groups for our seniors to engage with one another and also cross generations, right? So we have incredible youth that are coming out at very early ages. It would be great if we had a program that could link them to our elder community so that they could share the history and they could, our youth could really learn from our elders and our elders could really learn from our youth, right? There's no limit really to the possibilities of engagement. I think we have a really great opportunity here in Orange County because of what you mentioned earlier. our community transformed after the Pulse tragedy, and we came together in ways that just no other community has. And so the sky's really the limit when we think about what we want to do in terms of uplifting those that aren't necessarily always visible, and our elder population certainly falls into that category.
How is the LGBT senior community dealing with the onslaught of technology, and where meeting someone used to mean going to a bar, and meeting someone now means going online? And how has that impacted this, and layered on top of all the other considerations that an LGBT senior has to deal with, how does that impact them? How have you found?
Well, I've actually had speakers come in and talk about online predators, because that is an issue financially for all seniors, and certainly it's an issue for people who are dating online. And I think this group of people probably works with technology like any seniors. They're very proficient in some ways and not so much, and there's a lot of variety in that.
As well as with the apps, because of individuals or seniors, most seniors that were partnered are used to trusting. So the trust factors of their health for such things as HIV, Hep C, syphilis, gonorrhea, and chlamydia is a big factor, especially with Florida being the highest rate numbers of STIs among seniors.
I'm just thinking about personal stories of people that I know that are in their older years that have met people dating online and have met across the country. I have a friend whose mother is in her 80s and she's a lesbian, and she met someone across the country, and they've had this wonderful relationship just through technology, and that's perfectly fine for her, and that's enough for her. And so I think that it's individual. I think it's some people are going to embrace technology and some others aren't. But I think, to your point, Teresa, it's very important to make sure that our elder population isn't being preyed upon in any way, and that takes a community kind of keeping an eye on what's happening out there, and organizations like the Center really knowing where, and keeping in touch with our elders and saying, what apps are you using, what programs are you using, how are you communicating with people, and who are reaching out to you. So just being mindful to be somewhat protective, I think, in some ways is important.
The other thing about technology for all seniors is that it can isolate them. It can be a great way to stay in touch with people on Facebook, keep in touch with grandchildren, whatever, and dating apps can be wonderful. But it also isolates people, and what I try to encourage people to do who have friends and neighbors who are seniors, LGBT or otherwise, is, every once in a while, make the call, don't text. Stop when you go for your walk and run at night and say hi to the neighbor on his or her porch. Reach out to them, because they are isolated. All seniors have issues with isolation and loneliness, but LGBT seniors do, and people in Orlando do as well, because, as I said, sometimes they're new to the community. This is still a place where people retire.
Well, I just want to thank all of you for being with us today and sharing your knowledge and wisdom. And I want to thank our studio audience for being fantastic as well. And I hope you had a chance to learn something about the challenges of LGBT seniors and some of the opportunities that lie ahead for them as well. Thank you for watching Vital Living Forum. I'm Clarence Reynolds.